in the current situation. So we'll again, just a couple of pop-ups. So let me just make sure minimize. Yeah. So we'll chant verse Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 1, Chapter 13, verse 14. And Dr. Dashta quits home. I think some of you have been in the prior lecture, so you have the context. But Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayana Namaskritam Naram Chava Narottamam Devim Saraswati Vyasam Tato Jayatodire Nashtaprayashu Padrishu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtake Shnuta Svankata Krishna Vanya Shravana Kirtana Hridayatasta Padrani Vidnuti Sutsatam Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nanda Gopa Kumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha Om Agyantimaranasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmritam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupam Padamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Tanamne Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pacharane Shri Shunyavadi Pashtataya Deshakaptarane Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaur Bhaktinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So I'll thank you for joining, dear devotees. Thank you all. So you can see the screen for this is Canto 1, Chapter 13, Dhritarashtra quits home, and verse 14. So I'll recite, and then whoever would like can repeat. So I will recite thrice. Kanchit kalam atavat satkrito devatat sukham bhratur jastashyat shriyaskrit sarvesham sukham avaham. Kanchit kalam atha avatsat satkrito devatat sukham bhratur jastashyat sarvesham sukham avaham. Kanchit kalam atha avatsat satkrito devatat sukham bhratur jastashyat sarvesham sukham avaham. Kanchit kalam atha vatsat satkrito devatat sukham bhratur jastasya shreyaskrit sarvesham sukham avaham. I would like to chat, please go ahead.
Kanchit kalamatavatsit satkrito devadatsukam raturjayatasya shreyaskrit sarve samsukam avahan.
Thank you, Nagan Palam.
Thank you.
Kanchit kalamatavatsit tatkrito devatatsukham bhraturjeshtasya sheyaskrit sarvesham sukham avahan.
Thank you, Nagan.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
Jai Srila Prabhupada. Jai Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Hare Krishna. Karchit kalam arthavat sadisida satkruto devavat sukham bhratur cheshya sreyaskrit sarvesham sukham avaham. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Kanchit kalam atava tasye satkrito devavat sukham bhratur jestasya shreyaskrit sarvesham sukham Avagam.
Thank
Thank you,
you.
Prabhuji.
That's again, Mataji. Okay, any last devotee? Anyone else? Okay, I will start. Thank you. So, Kanchit, for a few days, I'm just scroll up. Kanchit, for a few days, Kalam, time, Atha, thus, Avatsit, resided, Satkritaha, being well treated, Devavat, just like a godly personality, Shukam, amenities, Bhratlu, of the brother, Jastasya, of the elder, Shreyakrit, for doing good to him, Sarvesham, all others, Shukam, happiness, Avahan, made it possible. Translation by His Divine Grace Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. Thus Mahatma Vidur, being treated just like a godly person by his kinsmen, remained there for a certain period just to pacify the mentality of his eldest brother and in this way bring happiness to all others. Thus Mahatma Vidur, being treated just like a godly person by his kinsmen, remained there for a certain period just to rectify the mentality of his eldest brother and in this way bring happiness to all others. So here we're reading chapter 13 starts out with, so the setting is that Maharaj Yudhishthira is in Hastinapur and Shri Vidurji is so Maharaj Yudhishthira and his family, extended as well as close, are back in Hastinapur after Kurukshetra battle and their victory. And then Vidurji, who essentially was insulted to the point of leaving Hastinapur, returned from a meeting, returned from a pilgrimage where the highlight of this pilgrimage was to meet Maitreya Muni and have discussions on Krishna Katha. And so Vidurji came back, and Vidurji was welcomed very nicely with his relatives. All the royal family were his relatives, of course. And he enlivened them again. And it says their life, it seemed as if life had returned to their bodies. That's the way to receive devotees. Not like it's a great austerity to have a devotee or meet them or take care of them. It's life coming back to a person. And of course, they cried in affection because they'd missed him so much, and to see him and see that he's well was very wonderful. They took care of his needs. And then Mother Yudhishthira remembered how Vidurji always protected him like the wings of a bird. And then asked him about what he did during his, pilgrimage. And then that very famous verse that your good self, devotees like your good self are the holy places personified. So the Dham is enlivened by the presence of those that are dear to Krishna. And then he transitions and Yudhishthira Maharaj asks about Dwarka and how things are going in Dwarka, because that's of course where his Maharaj Yudhishthira's attention goes. And Vidurji described everything that he had gone through. He did not describe about the Yadu dynasties, how Krishna arranged for the Yadu dynasty to leave the planet. And that was because Vidurji could not stand to see the Pandavas distressed. So he did not disclose unpalatable and unbearable things because he knew that would cause hurt. And then here we're at this verse, number 14, where Mahatma Vidur, being treated just like a godly person by his kinsmen, remained there for a certain period just to rectify the mentality of his eldest brother, and in this way bring happiness to all others. So please note the context of this, verses number 13. If you recall, number 13, it says he did not disclose the news of the Yadava's destruction because he knew this was caused distress by Yudhishthira Maharaj and his family. And here talks about that he remained there, he remained in Hastinapur here just to rectify the mentality of his eldest brother. So notice the two differences in approach between Yudhishthira Maharaj and Pandavas and his own brother Dhritarashtra. So let's read the purport by His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada. He chat. Saintly persons like Vidurji must be treated as a denizen from heaven. In those days, denizens of heavenly planets used to visit homes like that of Maharaj Yudhishthira, and sometimes persons like Arjun and others used to visit higher planets. So it was a bi-directional highway. Naraji is a spaceman who can travel unrestrictedly, not only within the material universes, but also in the spiritual universes. So it's not just going to the heavenly planets, it's also going to that which is the supremest planet. Even Naraji used to visit the palace of Maharaj Yudhishthira, and what to speak of other celestial demigods. It is only the spiritual culture of people concerned that makes interplanetary travel possible. Prabhupada wrote a little, his disciples compiled a little book, Journey to the Higher Planets. Maharaj Yudhishthira therefore received Vidur in the manner of reception offered to the demigods. Mahatma Vidur had already adopted the renounced order of life, and therefore he did not return to his paternal place to enjoy some material comforts. He accepted out of his own mercy that was offered to him by Maharaj Yudhishthira. He accepted out of his own mercy what was offered to him by Maharaj Yudhishthira. But the purpose of living in the palace was to deliver his elder brother, Dhritarashtra, who was too much materially attached. So the point that Srila Prabhupada is making is that Vidurji stayed there for some time. He didn't just come and leave. Dhritarashtra lost all his state and descendants in the fight with Maharaj Yudhishthira. And still, due to his sense of helplessness, he did not feel ashamed to accept the charity and hospitality of Maharaj Yudhishthira. On the other part, Maharaj Yudhishthira, it was quite in order to maintain his uncle in a befitting manner. But acceptance of such magnanimous hospitality by Dhritarashtra was not at all desirable. He accepted it because he thought there was no alternative. Vidurji particularly came to enlighten Dhritarashtra and to give him a lift to the higher status of spiritual cognition. Cognition means awareness. It is the duty of enlightened souls to deliver the fallen ones. And Vidurji came for that reason. But talks of spiritual enlightenment are so refreshing that while instructing Dhritarashtra, Vidur attracted the attention of all the members of the family, and all of them took pleasure in hearing him patiently. This is the way of spiritual realization. The message should be heard attentively, and if spoken by a realized soul, it will act on the dormant heart of the conditioned soul. And by continuously hearing, one can attain the perfect stage of self-realization. Very nice purport. Thus, Mahatma Vidur, being treated just like a godly person by his kinsmen, remained there for a certain period just to rectify the mentality of his eldest brother, and in this way bring happiness to all the others. Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Charame Shri Shunyavadi Prashtatadesh. So, throughout the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Bhagavatam wants us to know who is a qualified speaker and who is a qualified receiver of the Srimad Bhagavatam. And throughout the Bhagavatam, we see, and last week, Narottam Vilas Prabhu for Sunday Feast gave a nice lecture about the various dialogues that are occurring in Bhagavatam. Who is the speaker and who is the hearer? So hearing is mentioned throughout the Bhagavatam as the most important of the 9 kinds of devotional service. So the question is, and Srila Prabhupada, so Vidurji is speaking, but Srila Prabhupada at the end gives a very clear message. This is the way of spiritual realization. The message should be heard attentively, and if spoken by a realized soul, it will act on the dormant heart of the conditioned soul. And by continuously hearing, one can attain the perfect stage of self-realization. So I was going to speak on two aspects, the process of hearing, and then, if time permits, about the two conversations that are occurring between Vidurji and the Pandavas, and Vidurji and Dhritarashtra. So most important is the hearing aspect that Srila Prabhupada is emphasizing here. So hearing is considered the most important, as we know, of the 9 kinds of devotion service, as elucidated by Prahlad Maharaj. So what's so special about hearing? When we understand that hearing wasn't just, is in Bhagavatam, we understand that hearing is not just meant for day-to-day worldly topics, but for the activities and qualities of Krishna and his devotees. So in Bhagavatam, this is mentioned specifically in one point, get to it, point, it's cursed, Richard cursed, Brahmin boy. Those who are desirous of achieving complete perfection in life must submissively hear all topics that are connected with the transcendental activities and qualities of the personality of Godhead, who acts wonderfully. Srila Prabhupada's purport. Systematic hearing of transcendental activities, qualities, and names of Lord Sri Krishna pushes one towards eternal life. Systematic hearing means knowing him gradually in truth and fact. And this is knowing him in truth and fact means attaining eternal life. Knowing him in truth and fact means attaining eternal life. Is there a verse in Gita that says that, any of you? You can recall? Very famous.
Bhaktyamam abhijanati.
Yes.
I don't recall the full verse. I think that's the verse that the one who knows me in truth.
Yeah, that is true, sir. That's Srila Prabhupada quoted that often. I was thinking of this, Janma karma chame devyan, evam yo veti tattva, yaktva deham punar janma, naeti mameti swarjan. This is usually the favorite verse for Janmashtami lectures. One who knows the transcendental nature of my appearance and activities does not, upon leaving the body, take his birth again in this material world, but attains my eternal abode. Right? Srila Prabhupada says is referencing that here. Knowing him gradually in truth and fact, and knowing him in truth and fact means attaining eternal life. Thank you, Chandrasekhar Prabhu, for also reciting a very wonderful verse. So the question is, who should hear? So Srila Prabhupada has explained throughout his translations that that scriptures cast a very broad net. They're not just limited to certain select people. When they describe who are qualified to hear about Bhagwan and his devotees, included are people who are impious but curious about spiritual life, people who are pious yet distressed, inquisitive, or the wise. We know those 4 personalities who are interested in hearing about Krishna from Bhagavad Gita. And they're respective and have respect. They're receptive and have respect for the message and the messenger. And they want to attain life's goals. But even for those who want like wealth, fame, enjoyment, liberation, greatness, influence, etc., ultimately it's Krishna who gives or withholds these things. And by hearing about him, the point that the Shastra make is that such temporary gains or desires gradually decrease. So who should hear? Everybody should hear. That's what Srila Prabhupada is mentioning, and that's what this verse is hearing. Not just those that are favorable, like the Pandavas, but those who are unfavorable, like Dhritarashtra. So whom shall we hear from? And that becomes the next question. So if I'm qualified to hear about Krishna, who is everybody, then who's qualified to speak? And once again, Bhagavatam speaks about this consistently, that the speaker must follow Krishna's teachings and be part of a disciplic succession. Parampara. Parampara means to follow. Essentially, what this means is that the speaker must have taken shelter of Krishna and dedicated his or her life for working for him and feel themselves completely dependent on him. So from understanding this, we can understand that Srila Prabhupada and his disciples and grand disciples are qualified speakers. So, and here, let me go to this. Srila Prabhupada has a brilliant transition from Canto 1 to Canto 2. If you have time, try to read it. So there's this very, very famous verse. Let's see. Sorry. O greatly fortunate Shukadev Goswami, please continue narrating Srimad Bhagavatam so that I can place my mind upon the Supreme Soul, Lord Krishna, and being completely freed from material qualities, thus relinquish this body. Srila Prabhupada has a very nice sentence section here. Yep. Yeah. It is the duty of the sane to hear Srimad Bhagavatam from a self-realized soul and not be duped by professional men. And one should continue such hearing till the end of one's life so that one can actually have transcendental association with the Lord and thus be liberated simply by hearing. Maharaj Parikshit had already given up all connections with his family, kingdom, the most attractive features of materialism, but still he was conscious of his material body. He wanted to be free from such bondage also by constant association with the Lord. So here, the association is continue narrating Srimad Bhagavatam so I can place my mind upon the Supreme Soul, Sri Lord Krishna. So Srimad Bhagavatam is received from the right source. It was brought by Narad Muniji from the spiritual world and given to Srila Vyasdev, and who delivered it to Sri Shukadev Goswami, and Sri Shukadev Goswami simultaneously delivered to Maharaj Parikshit and the other members of his audience, just 7 days before the king's death. So Sri Shukadev Goswami in the Bhagavatam is compared to a parrot, not for his ability to recite the Bhagavatam exactly as he heard it from his esteemed father, Sri Vyasdev, but for his ability to present the work in a manner that would appeal to all classes of men. And he presents it in such a way that any sincere listener that hears submissively can at once relish the transcendental taste of those who are close to Krishna as distinct from the material taste in this world. So the point is that this ripened fruit of Bhagavatam did not just drop all of a sudden from the highest planet of Krishna Lok. Rather, it has come down very carefully through the chain of disciplic succession without change or disturbance. And it is true. So remember, and here I'm speaking about First, it said, who should hear, which is basically everybody, and whom shall we hear from? So it is true that the lineage of Bhagavatam is very, very powerful. But it's also true that Srila Prabhupada wanted all his disciples to speak about Krishna conscious topics, i.e., preaching, according to their capacity and understanding. But the preaching of disciples should always be on behalf of an authorized acharya, who's directly empowered by Guru Parampara and Sri Chaitanya Dev. Because the real potency for preaching is in the pure devotee. And the Shastra compare the pure devotee to a full moon. When the moon is full, no starlight is needed. But the brightest stars near the moon become beautiful, associating with the moon. So the pure devotees are in our lineage. Srila Prabhupada and our Guru Parampara, they may have disappeared from material vision, but they're still present. And they're like the moon, and the closer we are to them, the closer we will also become beautified by the moon's association. And Srila Prabhupada mentions this later on in this chapter. So this questions of Maharaj Parikshit about creation and destruction and etc. And Srila Prabhupada says, here, every devotee should be very enthusiastic, not only in performing his daily rituals of devotional service, but in trying to preach the cult peacefully by following in the footsteps of Lord Chaitanya. If he is not superficially successful in such an attempt, he or she should not be deterred from the discharge of his duty. Success or failure has no meaning for a pure devotee because he is a soldier in the field. You see in these battles, Ukraine, Russia, Israel, Hamas, they're soldiers, and then there are those superiors who hopefully have their best wishes at heart or guiding them. Soldiers simply following the instruction of the higher individuals. Preaching the cult of devotional service is something like declaring war against materialistic life. So who should preach? Srila Prabhupada says everybody's duty. But how should we preach? We should understand the potency for preaching comes from the pure devotee. And if we are close to that pure devotee by hearing and listening and serving his or her manobhishtam, then we can be empowered to preach. Okay, so that's who we should hear. A very important topic is, so we talked about who should hear and from whom should we hear. And then a very important thing is, okay, how should I hear? How should I hear? So we've heard the importance of hearing. Next question should be, obvious. How should I hear? We all hear. We have the ears and that sense organ. But what's Bhagavatam emphasizing? What's the correct attitude to hear with? And we will see that if we sincerely take this on, that hearing properly is not an easy process initially. And so we must learn through the Bhagavatam and through Gita that the example of the saintly personalities and how they heard is very relevant to us. After all, Vidurji heard from Maitreya Muni, and Yudhishthira Maharaj is hearing from Vidurji, and so is Dhritarashtra. The devotional life of a saintly person explains how to correctly execute what Srila Prabhupada called the scientific process of hearing and chanting. So the first thing we'll see when we read Bhagavatam and read the conversation between Sri Arjuna and Lord Krishna is that character is Very important. Everything else is a shadow. First quality of knowledge that's described in Gita is humility. Humility and tolerance should be the basis of our qualification for any service, including hearing in devotion life. Meaning we should try to understand how is what we hear in Bhagavatam similar to, and how is it different from what those saintly personalities are doing. On hearing, by hearing, we're trying to acquire knowledge, obviously. But the attitude and the character is very important. So Srila Prabhupada mentions this here. This very well-known verse in Canto 1, Chapter 1. 1 point. This one. Those who listen to Bhagavatam may put questions to the speaker in order to elicit the clear meaning, but this should not be done in a challenging mood. He should present his or her queries, with great regard for the speaker and the subject matter. So there should be character. That's why Srila Prabhupada called it submissive or reception. So hearing and understanding is not just a question of information accumulation. Rather, it's to become an antenna, like a TV or a radio, to receive the mercy of Guru Parampara. So that's point one. Character is most important in hearing. Point two is humility and tolerance, as Lord Krishna himself describes. He talks about the qualities. He doesn't give, material qualities. He starts out with talking about humility and tolerance. So when we have humility and tolerance, we understand that advancement and supercidity, satisfaction, bhakti, is dependent on the purity of our heart. And that means purity of intent and consistency of effort. If we have purity of intent and aren't consistently reading or hearing or chanting, then advancement is difficult. Where we have consistent effort but no purity, meaning we're coming with some other agenda, then to receive, be the antenna that's hearing from these great personalities, then advancement slows down. Back in this chapter 1 has lots of things about hearing written by Srila Prabhupada. O Sutta Goswami, we are eager to learn about the personality of Godhead and its incarnations. Please explain those teachings imparted by previous masters acharyas. One is uplifted both by speaking them and hearing them. So they have purity of intent and they're consistent. Srila Prabhupada will say the conditions for hearing the transcendental message of absolute truth are set forth here. The first condition is that the audience must be very sincere and eager to hear. So that's character quality. If I'm filled with my sense of myself and my position, etc., and my achievements, then I will have no space within me to have the humility and tolerance to hear things that are different than myself. The transcendental message of the absolute is not understandable by those who are materially absorbed. This is what is meant as insincere. Right? When Srila Prabhupada says insincere, he's talking about those that are materially absorbed. So if we come with like a motivations of fame, prestige, I have X number of followers, I have this position in ISKCON, or that position, or I'm so and so, then such self-absorption will not allow us to get a benefit, full benefit at least. So the idea is that from the examples from the Bhagavatam, we hear about Krishna this is about how we should hear, right? That's what we're talking about. In the association of his devotees. And as we become absorbed in hearing about him, we absorb Krishna's transcendental message, which is identical to him. And it's certainly the case that we may be lacking the qualities needed to hear properly, but simply by trying to hear, we could acquire those qualities. So eagerness, as demonstrated here by the humility and tolerance of the sadhus at the Mishra, is our qualification. Why? This is because hearing the pastimes and glories of Bhagavan is the basis of devotional service, as Krishna mentions. The Bhagavad Gita. It is through hearing that the Lord, in the form of sound, enters our heart. And then the other processes follow. Shrinuta Swakata Krishna, Vanya Shavana Kirtana. And the great, wonderful verse I really love that I've heard devotees reading and commenting on this wonderful verse spoken by Brahmaji in Canto 3, Chapter 9, verse 11. O my Lord, your devotees can see you through the ears by the process of bona fide hearing, and thus their hearts become cleansed, and you can take seat there. You are so merciful to your devotees that you manifest yourself in the particular eternal form of transcendence in which they always think of you. Your devotees can see you through the ears by the process of bona fide hearing. So we hear about Krishna in the association of devotees. As we become absorbed in hearing about him, we absorb his transcendental message, which is identical to Sri Krishna. I am lacking the qualities needed to hear properly, but simply by trying to hear, I can acquire those qualities. My eagerness and my faith is very important. So something Srila Prabhupada talks about, an aspect of hearing. So I must have humility, I must have tolerance, and I must be in association with devotees, either in form of hearing, through recordings, or in presence, even more powerfully in the presence of the devotee. So you will see that the Bhagavatam is a list of dialogues, right? Dialogues means question and answer. So one aspect of hearing that the Bhagavatam consistently describes is a power of very inquisitive questions in terms of personal growth, personal spiritual growth. They're the famous motivational speaker. I don't know whether many of you heard of them. Some of you who are a little bit older probably have. It's really popular in the 1990s and the early 2000s. His name is Tony Robbins. And I remember hearing one long time ago, hearing one thing that he said. He said, the quality of our lives depends on the quality of the questions we ask. I will repeat. The quality of our lives depends on the quality of the questions that we ask. So this brings home to us the power of questions and understanding who I am as a person and what am I really interested in. Because thinking, the mind is always asking questions. Should I do this? Should I do that? Should I eat this? Should I do that? Should I go out? It's rainy, icy. Mind is always asking questions. So what we think about or the questions we ask ourselves teaches us what we think is important, what we really want, and the kind of person we think that we are. So if we ask shallow or superficial questions, then we will receive shallow or superficial answers. And those answers will confirm our doubts and our lack of faith. Because the questions we ask showed what we're interested in, what we believe about ourselves, which shape the directions of our life. So our Shastras, our scriptures, even the Ramayana, are to a large extent questions and answers of those with great urgency to understand. By reading the Gita, Srimad Bhagavatam, Ramayana, we're given a new set of questions about our life, our soul, Bhagwan. And according to our interest and our urgency, we find inspiration and ask questions. So Prakshit Maharaj is the example of how to hear Srimad Bhagavatam, not for the purpose of getting some pious credits or being socially acceptable that, oh, I was in the Bhagavatam class. He was coming to Shukadev Goswami with humility, tolerance, eagerness, and sense of urgency. He was starving for this knowledge. In the forest, he was starving for water. But sitting next to Shukadev Goswami, he was striving for purity. So we can't digest food without hunger. And likewise, our eagerness and our urgency and how we see that this knowledge is essential to our lives, then we can understand it. So Parikshit Maharaj is, of course, cursed to die in 7 days. And he's holding on to every word with a desire that Shukadev Goswami is speaking, with a desire to connect. With whom? With Krishna. So Prabhupada speaks about this later on. He says that Parikshit Maharaj knew for sure in 7 days that he was going to die. But there's not a person in this world who knows that they even have 7 minutes to live. So tolerance, humility, eagerness, urgency, that is a consciousness suitable to understand Srimad Bhagavatam. That's called sincere and submissive hearing, where Srila Prabhupada defined insincere as coming in with material points of view. Because the reality of understanding is not intellectual for Shastra. Jnana Vigyan. Real joy of understanding is when there's realization. Real joy of hearing is when there's realization. And realization does not come by our IQ, by our intellectual capacity, our piety, even our austerities. Realization comes from the grace of Krishna. It can only be given by Krishna. Samsiddhir Haritoshanam, when Krishna is pleased with us. So that was a little bit about how we should hear. And then, why is hearing effective? Well, that's what Prabhupada says something very nice. In Krishna book, Srila Prabhupada paraphrases summarizes from Bhagavatam. In the pairs by the personified Vedas, this is a very wonderful chapter in Krishna book. I urge those of you that haven't read this to read it. Prabhupada says, Parikshit Maharaj inquired from Shukadev Goswami about a very important topic in understanding transcendental matter. His question was, since Vedic knowledge generally deals with subject matters of the 3 qualities of material world, how can it approach the subject matter of transcendence, which is beyond the approach of the 3 modes? So he's trying to bring in the nature of the mind. Since the mind is material, and the vibrations of the words as material sound, how can Vedic knowledge expressing by material sound the thoughts of material mind approach transcendence. Devahuti also asked a similar question to Kapil Dev. So that's a great question. So by Krishna's exceptional grace, his words in the scriptures are identical to him. Nam Chintamani Krishna's Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha Purna Shuddha Nitya Mukto Vinatva Namani. The holy name of Krishna bestows all spiritual benedictions because it's Krishna himself, the reservoir of all pleasure. Krishna's name is not material under any condition. It's no less powerful than Krishna himself. So the real purpose of Bhagavatam is not material improvement. The real purpose of Bhagavatam is not material improvement, but it's the opposite, the complete subsidence or cessation of material existence through purification and renunciation. We can see that in every single dialogue in Bhagavatam. Because by carefully hearing, even materialists and non-devotees can become free from bodily attachments. There's so many examples in Bhagavatam. So the desire to hear about Krishna is an inconceivable blessing. The desire to hear about Krishna is an inconceivable blessing. The desire to hear about Krishna is an inconceivable blessing. Because by hearing, we can realize Krishna's beauty. We can see him in relation to all things. We can see that all things, even in the material world, are beautiful and sacred. Our life, as a result, will do 180 or 360, 180-degree change. Our life will become joyous. When we see anything material, we can remember that it's not material at all. It may appear material. That's why there's so many sections on creation and destruction and the origin of the universe and the grandness of the universe in Bhagavatam. Why is that there? Because it may appear material, but actually the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Shri Krishna Bhagavan, is behind everything, at every moment. His involvement is always there, even after the whole universe is created, and through the three modes of nature as well. So Kadamnakanam Maharaj talked about this in one very nice lecture. He said, Lord Krishna never leaves us alone. He is present at every stage when the living being enters and leaves the world, not just as Paramatma. So in so many ways, Krishna is involved in our material journey, in our material situation. Not just in this life, but we're having a journey through the material world. But never for a moment are we abandoned. Like Krishna talks about in Bhagavad Gita, that those who are assuredly cast into the hellish planets, and some people say, wow, Krishna is a pretty mean person. But who goes with those people in the hellish planets? Their parents? Their friends? Their job? No. Krishna in the form of Paramatma goes with them. So never for a moment are we without Krishna. Although it may appear so when our knowledge about Bhagavan is covered. So by hearing about Krishna, we can deliberate on him, and we're moved by his transcendental, unprecedented personality. And our mundane issues subside. Krishna is so beautiful that when we hear about him, we're inspired to share what we've heard, to grow from that knowledge that we've received and become renewed. And then we begin to long for Krishna. And when we do that, then we become more beautiful and our lives become closer to him. So that's what Maharaj Yudhishthira is doing with the Pandavas, and Yudhishthira Maharaj in particular, and with Dhritarashtra. We see with the Pandavas when Maharaj Vidura came to visit Yudhishthira Maharaj, Vidurji, when he came to visit Mr. Maharaj, he was well received, as we went over in a brief summary of the chapter, by family, and life had come back to them. Yudhishthira Maharaj asked Vidurji what happened, and Vidurji, and specifically Yudhishthira Maharaj, had a deep desire to hear about Krishna. But Vidurji was compassionate towards the Pandavas. Since he had seen the difficulties of the Pandavas since childhood, he didn't disclose the news of the Yadu dynasty destruction, even though it was the truth. Because Krishna talks about Anudvegam Karam Vakyam Satyam Priyamitam Cha, right? Why did he not disclose? Because it was not beneficial, nor was it pleasing. It was not priya, it was apriya. Amcha, it was unbearable. That he knew this would bring unbearable pain to the Pandavas. So he did not tell the truth. He knew that Pandavas would obviously hear that news eventually, but he didn't want to play the role of that kind of messenger. The distress comes on its own, by its own ways. And we shouldn't aggravate it, Srila Prabhupada says, by propaganda. But Vidurji was on a very different mission, as this verse indicates, to rectify the mentality of his brother. In this case, to tell a naked truth to a different person deliberate. So Vidurji's main purpose of coming to Hastinapur, as you will see in the rest of the chapter, is to deliver Dhritarashtra from the cruel hands of death. Vidurji, and later on you'll see, calls him Raja, which is kind of a sarcastic thing because he's not king anymore, and urges him to leave. And he creates a great sense of, as we read the verses, I don't want to speak about them in great depth so that other speakers can glorify them nicely. He creates a tension within Dhritarashtra and pushes pressure with every sentence. He says how powerful time factor is. No one can be spared. He puts examples of others who are killed by time. And then he starts telling Dhritarashtra about his old age, saying how his body and his subtle body and have weakened. Then he kind of gives a big whack to Dhritarashtra's ego by saying that Dhritarashtra is a grahapalapat, which means a household dog. He's talking to his own brother. Eating food given by Bhim, who he knows Dhritarashtra understands, killed two of his sons. And then he talks about how Dhritarashtra is leading a degraded life by depending on the charity of those for whom he had done a lot of disservice. Then Vidurji comes out and gives a solution. He says, and Srila Prabhupada has a wonderful comment on this. He states how, Dhira, so is one who in old age go to an unknown place and give up their useless body and depend on Paramatma. And then he concludes by urging him to go to the north. So Vidurji spoke the naked truth to Dhritarashtra where he did not to Maharaj Yudhishthira. And because first, in prior instances, Vidurji, when he spoke, used to advise Dhritarashtra to take action against Duryodhana and stop the war. Dhritarashtra gave the excuse of saying, it's all according to Lord's will, what can I do? So very interesting, or very good instruction to understand here is that our ego diminishes us. Because most of us would rather find information that confirms what we already believe rather than seek out information that challenges our belief. And even though Vidurji presented Dhritarashtra with facts that directly contradict what he believes, thanks to his and our own ego, we may become even more fixed on those faulty beliefs. Secondly, so that's the first reason he spoke the truth, because he had spoken it previously and Darshana was very attached. Secondly, Vidurji was aware of the influence of Kal and the approach of Kali Yuga, and he wanted to strongly impress upon the mind of Dhritarashtra about this awkward position. And finally, Srila Prabhupada elaborates, and Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur talks about this as well in his commentary to this chapter, is Vidurji's compassion to Dhritarashtra that he spoke in this way. Because it was not necessarily Priyam or Anudvegam Kara, not necessarily pleasing or benefit or that kind of thing, but it was beneficial for Dhritarashtra. So the takeaway from Anudvegam Karam Vakyam is that, is it the truth? If it's not, then maybe I shouldn't speak it. Is it beneficial? If it's not, maybe I should consider. Is it pleasing? If it's not, maybe I need to reconsider. Two other things is that, is it the right time to speak such things? You can see that in Vidurji's example with both Yudhishthira and with Dhritarashtra. And am I the right person to speak? You can see that again in his conversations with Yudhishthira Maharaj and Dhritarashtra. So not only is it the truth, not only is it beneficial, not only is it pleasing, but is it the right time? And am I the right deliverer of this news? Because it was beneficial with Dhritarashtra. The proof is the pudding. He was able to leave home and give up the attachments that he cultivated throughout his entire life. So the result of Vidurji speaking strongly actually gave him the impetus to liberation. And Srila Prabhupada says that if we look at, I'll wrap with this in here, in this verse that I'm speaking from austerity of speech. A teacher, when he speaks, can speak the truth for the instruction of his students, meaning directly. And that's what Vidurji was doing here. For us, therefore, it's not enough to be convinced that I'm speaking truthfully. It must be combined with the ability to communicate in a way that somebody's uplifted, not insulted. So we have to be deeply aware of our words and their far-reaching and irreversible consequence, and to take responsibility for them. Jai Shri. I went over time by 5 minutes. We spoke about that. Who should hear? Whom should we hear from? How should I hear? What is the power of hearing? And then ended up by speaking specifically about how Vidurji spoke differently to the Pandavas and to the Dhritarashtra, and his motivation and the power of speech. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Any corrections, additions?
Thank you, Prabhuji. Nice exposition. I really liked your focus on tolerance, humility, and building character.
Yes.
So, and I like that point that one is defined by the questions that he asks. That's very true. So thank you for sharing your realizations.
Thank you for being present and uplifting the discussion. Yes. Srila Prabhupada. Yeah. Anyone else? Questions, comments, additions?
Thanks, Shubhu. Thank you so much for the wonderful class, especially about the importance of hearing. As I mentioned, where to hear, how to hear, from whom to hear, in what mood to hear, and in context to, and also what why Buddha spoke, what he spoke. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Prabhu.
Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you, Prabhuji. Especially you explained whom we are to hear and how to hear, when to hear. The time is very sensitive. Time is very little in human being. We have to know the Krishna consciousness. And one more thing, Arjuna is very lucky to hear this Bhagavatam direct to Sri Krishna. He is the Karana Janma, maybe like that. That is very important in this class. Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Krishna, thank you, Mataji. Anything else? Any other questions? Comments, additions? Okay. So thank you all for joining. We have gathering today at temple at 11:30. We have a nice program that has been arranged with chanting of Ram bhajans and glorification of Sri Ram. We'll have a repeat of that wonderful play that was created about the Ramayana pastime. And and we have lots of our youth are back in town, and so we should be able to hear nice Krishna Kirtan. So please come. Okay. Drive safe. The road is still icy in places, and I think as the day progresses, hopefully the weather will improve and become safer for everybody. Okay. So drive carefully, but please come. Thank you very much. And check out Patrivyacha, also in the Behavior. Titanam Papnibhyo Vaishnavyo Namo Namaha. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Prabhu. Thank you.
Thank you,
Very nice.
Prabhuji.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Krishna.
Thank you, Paramita Prabhu. Thank you, Chandrasekhar Prabhu.
Hare Krishna. Very nice.
Okay.